What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We are back here tonight to take a look at AEW Forbidden Door for 2024. It is hailing live from Long Island, New York this Sunday, June 30th, which is crazy that it's the end of June already and that we're going into July. This year is just flying by, but we're going to get right into the show here. I'm not going to waste too much time. I just want to say, as always, thank you so much for checking out the show, for following us either here, watching us here either on YouTube or listening to the show on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff, and following us on Twitter at Podcast underscore, or me personally at ASHMANNS. Like I said, there is of course, good amount of matches on the show here. I think 13 total, with 10 being on the main card itself. So we're going to dive right into it. Some of the cards that I'm kind of questioning, or some of the matches rather, that I'm questioning whether even on the card to begin with, we may just kind of, not want to say breeze right through, but just kind of get to the point that there may not even be much built in and kind of keep it moving, right? And in regards to the pre-show, we're going to get to the one that I think is most important, no offense to the other ones, but the Women's Owen Hart Cup tournament match. So definitely want to take a look at that. And then, like I said, move on to the regular card itself. As a whole, I think that AEW, again, look, we've said it multiple times, and it's no surprise. AEW's pay per views are kick ass, right? Like, you go into the pay per view knowing it's going to be a great show in ring wise, and that's never the question, and never the concern. Um, Maybe the concern sometimes is the length of the show, rather, because 9 times out of 10, the majority of the matches are gonna get a good amount of time, which is a blessing and a curse, which is why it's so important to have, I guess, match control, like the number wise, right? You don't want to go on there and have 15 matches on a card. So I appreciate that he being Tony Khan and the creators of the show here actually did end up putting 3 matches on the pre-show there. So you're not obligated, right? If you're buying the pay-per-view, you're not going to be forced to watch 13 matches total. And again, not saying that all those matches wouldn't be good, but you get to a point where it's like, okay, like you just want to get up and start doing something else. Once you get 4 or 5 hours into doing one thing, right? So at least it's just me, and that's just my opinion. You can be really enjoying something, but still kind of be like, okay, like I kind of want to switch things up, and I got shit to do, especially it's getting later at night. So yeah. So with that being said, I think that the build for the pay-per-view itself is a little bit. I'm not as excited. I guess I'll just put it that way. I'm not as excited as for this pay per view going into it as I have been in the past for prior Forbidden Doors. And I think too, because I was wondering about it when I was doing some random shit earlier today, and thinking about recording the pod. Maybe why? Why is it lacking a bit this year? And I think you have your obvious reasons why. A lot of your big names we've already seen or are on the AEW side now. New Japan has not been as hot apparently as they have been in the past. Again, I'm not gonna act like I'm a religious watcher of New Japan, but more of a very, very, very casual viewer of them, and kind of like a follower of their product. But with that being said, the talents and the big stars that New Japan did have, they're on the AEW side. Of course, you have your Okadas, your Jay White, your Ospreys, just to name a few on the WWE AEW side, and it kind of makes it one-sided. Obviously, like it's it's just one of those things where maybe they should have possibly skipped this format of pay-per-view this year and maybe switched it up, or instead of having a pay-per-view altogether this month, just have like a special Dynamite or a special different type of show going into a big week, if you want to hype up a week of really like important shows or something to that effect. And then just keep your focus solely on All In going forward, especially with it, it's crazy, like I was saying, how quickly time is flying. We're almost at the beginning of July, right? So it wouldn't even be that crazy to think that you're just all in, no pun intended, focusing on that pay-per-view and at Wembley. Um, and especially again, if that's going to be your WrestleMania like pay-per-view going forward each year. So I don't know. And I think too, also with the Forbidden Door format, it's not really that forbidden, right? We see a lot of talent going back and forth throughout the year, whether it's New Japan talent or TNA talent or now CMLL talent, um, especially within AEW. And then you have your Ring of Honor as well, which obviously, Ring of Honor is owned by AEW as well. So that's not really a Forbidden Door esque type thing as well. But it is two different companies, essentially. Like we're not going to get into the specifics of that. Nowhere near enough time for that. But it's just one of those things where it doesn't seem as necessary or as hot as it once was, and that's because we've seen a lot of it. So again, but I'm not gonna say that that it's not gonna be a good pay per view or anything like that. We all know that that is AEW's probably one of its top strong points as a company, that they put on kick ass pay per views, and I'm gonna enjoy it. We're all gonna sit here and enjoy it. Is it gonna be one of the best ones that they've had? Most likely, no, but I have faith going into it. So with that being said, and that quick opinion out of the way, we'll actually get into the card here. Take a quick swig of the good old Arizona tea. And I saw an early interview that apparently the owner of the Arizona company did, that why he's not raising prices. So shout out to him. But like I said, on the pre-show, the match that we'll take a look at is the Mariah May versus Saraya for the advancement in the women's Owen Hart Cup tournament. To me, again, this one is a no-brainer. I said this, was it for the Double or Nothing pay-per-view prediction show? Maybe. That this is, of course, setting up Mariah May versus Toni Storm in the future, with all signs continuing to point that way. So I'd be very surprised if Saraya won this one. But I think this is going to be a fun little match. I think this is going to be probably the main event of the pre-show, right? The gosh, what is it? I forget that do they call each pre-show the buy-in or something like that? I forget what they call theirs, but I think it's gonna be, my dogs are in the room with me as well if you hear them. Shout out to them if they make an appearance, and apologies in advance if they bark at random shit. But I think that Mariah May needs to be spotlighted rather, and showcased in this match. And I think it's going to be competitive, but I think that Mariah May, of course, it's a no brainer to me that she's going to win. But I think this needs to be a good showing for her, and I think Saraya is going to be a good opponent for her to kind of get a good match under her belt. The main card is where we start here now with the AEW TNT Championship match. It is for the vacant TNT title since Edge or Adam Copeland. And I don't even know why I said Edge. Like I knew that I was like I hadn't slipped up recently, but whatever. Your competitors are Konosuke Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Jack Perry, Dante Martin, Leo Rush, the returning Leo Rush. I don't know if he's officially been signed, but he's obviously being included in this match as well. And El Phantasmo. This is going to be a crazy match with the people involved. I mean, just your Dante, Leo Rush, and El Phantasmo alone right there. It's a no-brainer. This is going to have some crazy spots. I hope Dante Martin is careful. He just returned not too long ago from a crazy injury that he had back at a Ring of Honor show. I forget what it was. He had messed up his leg. Doing a dive or something. I think it was a senton off of a ladder, if I'm not mistaken, from the inside to the outside. Um, it could be blurring spots, but just be careful, bro. Just be careful out there, dude. It's just pick your spots, you know what I mean? And then of course Leo Rush, he's gonna have a moment there with making his return into AEW. But this one to me is a no-brainer. You do have your to me, I it's just kind of random that Takeshita's even in this match. I wish he would have been doing something else and spotlighted a different way, but at least he's on the card. But I think it's a no-brainer that Jack Perry is gonna win this match, and this match is essentially for him. He's gonna hold the title until Adam Copeland heals up and makes his return, in my opinion. And it's just even another little nod to the Elite's belt and just another bragging point for them. So Jack Perry has that one. But again, I think that's going to be a good match and a fun match. And I'm excited to see what Jack Perry does in this match too, and to see how brutal he gets in it and how vicious, I guess, rather, he takes his character. Because again, there's no rules, obviously. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. So we'll see how crazy he gets in this match, or if he just is kind of takes the ride of just kind of like doing maybe one or two things and then taking a step back, and kind of letting everyone else do the dirty work for him and then kind of sneaking in at the tail end and taking the victory. But I think I think we're gonna see something special maybe out of Perry from this match too. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what ends up coming from it. Next, we have the AEW Women's World Championship. Timeless Tony Storm facing off against Mira Shirakawa. Again, this one is not really much of a question to me. This one is again focusing, and I will say too, props to them and credit to them as a whole that they've actually have had a story building going into this, and this is one that could have continued, uh, regardless of if this was in a for a championship or not. Right? This is why it's kind of frustrating for me too why more women don't get side storylines besides just focusing for the title. And I think this is one of those examples that it could have been happening on the sideline without Tony Storm even needing to have the championship. But with the state of the women's division and the just different attention being, or the attentions being in different places, right? You have your TBS championship, and then you have your women's world championship, and then just a lot of people out with injuries, and then your tournament going on right now as well. I think you need to keep the title on Tony Storm, and for multiple reasons. But I think for obvious the main one here being Mariah May, and it would kind of be foolish to have Mariah May advance in the tournament and then have Tony Storm lose here, and vice versa. So, and I definitely don't see them both losing. So, I think Tony picks up the victory here. There's going to be some type of interference from Mariah May, and I think it may even be something where we see a situation where she tries to slide in an object into the ring, and it's one of those where it slides into the middle, and it's just a matter of who grabs it first, and maybe Tony does. Maybe it's like brass knuckles or something like that. Um, or it's just she goes to maybe slip up someone like Tony Storm, and she ends up slipping up Mina, or just something where it's a little bit ambiguous and you're not really sure what side she's on, or she just does flat out chooses Tony Storm and calls it a day. I'm not sure if we're gonna get much more from Mina on weekly TV now that we're here at Forbidden Doors. So this could be a way of solidifying Mariah May and Tony Storm as a partnership going forward, before we do get to the eventual breakup here. So to me, this is another no-brainer of Tony Storm retaining the title here. I think it's gonna be a good and a fun match though, but and I think this one it's one of the rare ones that's more storyline and story focused, and I think this is obvious just for the story itself too. Um, Next up we have the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho and Big Bill, along with Jeff Cobb, which is just so fucking random, facing off against Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata. And I say it's random because the angle that they did on Dynamite, right, with oh my gosh, what did his name just escape my brain? Um, oh my goodness gracious. Oh, that's what it was. Suzuki, of course. Sitting in the video for Jericho, right, saying how, oh yeah, like of course Jericho was under the impression that he was sending his acceptance video that he was going to be part of the team, and it turns out he did not, and he actually wanted to face Jericho one on one. And then I know I had to have missed something, and if not, then it just makes even less sense. But did get a confirmation that Jericho accepted Suzuki's challenge 101, and then all of a sudden Jeff Cobb was inserted as the third man for the Learning Tree side to face off against Joe, Hook, and Shibata. Again, I know why Jeff Cobb is on the pay per view itself because Cobb had issued, I'm pretty sure, an open challenge, if I'm not mistaken, a few months ago, or stated that he was going to be involved and had issued some type of challenge, and it just kind of went to the wayside. And then now we have him included in the Learning Tree here. I don't really know what happened. I again, I feel like I had to have missed something. So if you guys know, let me know in the comments, wherever, or shoot me a tweet at Kickash Podcast _ But I don't really know why Cobb is included. Um, so again, I whatever. And to me, like, it kind of makes it even more uncertain to choose a winner here, and not in a fun way, and a kind of a unfortunate way, because you have the Learning Tree, right? And if you really want to make something of this, why would you have them lose so soon? But I really don't think you want Joe and Hook to lose either. So and Shibata, by default as well. But I don't know, and I hate to see Cobb come in and take the loss for that team is also, so that's why it makes it just something that doesn't even really need to be happening, and in this pay per view and on this card and in this type of setting. But with that being said, I'm gonna take Joe, Hook, and Shibata. I can't predict, and I can't have Jericho's team winning against Joe and Hook, just by themselves, period, let alone with Shibata being included in there as well. Unless Shibata is the one to take the loss. But again, that's just I don't know. I don't see a need for that. And again, it I guess it kind of does defeat the purpose of the learning tree, right? If you're trying to set this up as something long term for Jericho, but I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with the guys. If you've listened to me in the past, you know. Um I it's just too much for me. Too much. So officially, again, I'm going Joe, Hook, and Shibata for the W there. Next up, we have MJF facing off against Chetsushiro. Uh, Again, this is another one of those matches that was just thrown on there, I think, just to get MJF on the card to do something. Of course, with being in Long Island, how can you not? Um, and again, this is obviously another no-brainer. There's not really much to say about this one. MJF is taking the victory here. I think it would be the upset of the decade if he lost here and just so fucking crazy. So there's no way that's gonna happen. The question to me is how long the match is gonna be, and if anyone is gonna show up afterwards, or if it's just gonna be a straight MJF victory and we move on to the next type thing. The next matchup we have on the card is Orange Cassidy facing off against Zack Sabre Jr. Again, this one is a little bit random as well. At least we have a little bit of backstory with Orange Cassidy picking up the victory in a fatal four-way in a four-way that we had, I believe, last year with Sabre being involved in it as well. This one I was when I was thinking about it, was a little bit more iffy on because while Cassidy is almost like the golden boy, right? Like he rarely loses, it seems, and I'd be curious to see his overall victory or win a loss record rather as a whole in AEW, but especially on pay-per-views, I feel like he just has a really good record. And obviously in singles matches. But I can't see Sabre coming in and taking the loss here again to Cassidy unless it's going to be like a running joke type thing or a running thing that he just can't beat Cassidy. Which again, I'm not even the biggest Sabre fan or follower or knowledge. Like I'm gonna act, sit here and act like I've seen like a good amount of matches, but from what I've seen and what I know of him, like you just it's not like it's gonna be the most asinine thing or the craziest thing to have him lose to Orange Cassidy. And Orange Cassidy is a very good wrestler. And again, if you've checked me out in the past or if you heard me on random podcasts with other friends, you know that I was one of those people that wasn't really aware of Orange Cassidy prior to him coming into AEW when they first began. And when I saw his character, I didn't hate it because it was just different, right? And I just needed to take some time to figure out like what his shtick was and the thought process behind it. And it's fine. And I think he's really grown as a character and he's really evolved as a character in a lot of ways. Yes, while keeping, like his basic foundation and what got him to the dance per se. But evolving and not just being the guy who says one or two words, but actually having a little bit more to say, but not being the one dominating the conversation type thing. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't hate it if Cassidy wins, but I don't see Sabre losing here again. And who knows? It could set them up again for like another little rematch in the future. Uh, but with this one, I'm going Sabre wins here. And I, while I'm thinking about solidifying that, I could see like a quick roll up victory for Cassidy and just having Zach just being like, what the fuck type thing. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe even Sabre needs a little bit more than Cassidy right now. So I'm going with Zack Sabre Jr. to take the W here, although I feel like I could be wrong. Just with Cassidy just always being victorious, it feels like. Next up, we have the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship on the line. Your champion coming into the show is Jon Moxley facing off against Tetsuya Naito, Nati, Naito. Been another long day, and this Florida heat, man, back in Florida, and it is something fierce, and it's just the beginning. But I think Naito takes the victory here. Of course, we know Moxley won or took the title from him. I think it was at the Windy City Riot show back in, I forget the month. They say maybe 6 months ago or so now in Chicago. But I didn't see the match, but I saw some like highlights from it. It was obviously, pretty decent. Pretty decent. It's pretty good. It's you're never gonna get a match that's even less than decent, is what I was gonna say, with Moxley and Naito, right? And while to me it may be crazy to predict Moxley losing a championship match like this on a pay-per-view. I think it's time for an upset, and I think it's time for something kind of shocking. So I'm going with Naito winning here and winning the championship, and I think New Japan needs a big strong victory on one of these shows here. If I'm not mistaken, none of them really in the past stand out to me. It's always pretty much been the AEW talent getting the big dubs, if you know. So I don't know. I while to me again, like if I was putting money on it, would it be a little bit more hesitant to bet against Moxley, but I think I would. I think I would stick with my pick here with it being Naito. And I think it's gonna be cool. I think it's gonna be a fun moment and something that they can look back on in the past. And again, it sets up another rematch for Moxley in the future if they need to go back to it. If he needs to go back during Wrestle Kingdom or something like that. So I'm going with Moxley taking the loss here and us crowning a new champion going forward. Next up, we have the AEW TBS champion or championship rather, and the New Japan. I can't talk right now. New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Women's Championship champions, both being on the line here. You have the Strong Women's Champion Stephanie Vaquer chasing off. Why can't I don't my brain is just not working right now. Facing off against Mercedes Moné, and I think again, thankfully for my brain, I guess this one is another. I guess no pun intended for me. No brainer here. Mercedes is gonna win, and I think this is just setting her up to kind of, which could set us up again for something in All In that I was kind of wondering about. But well, probably not All In. Maybe a pay per view in the future, but I think Mercedes is gonna go on a little bit of like a almost like a belt collector type run, with like something similar to what Omega did. I was gonna say possibly setting her up for a unification match with Tony Storm or Mariah May, whoever ends up winning between those two when they end up facing each other. A long term prediction there, but to me, I obviously don't think that's going to be happening at All In. With that, of course, being Mercedes being included in that type of unification, I think we're going to be getting Tony Storm versus Mariah May at All In, and then excuse me, whoever wins that, then we can go from there, facing off against Monet, if that was even going to be a possibility or a thought. Um, but yeah, I again, this one to me is pretty cut and dry. Mercedes is gonna win here. I think it's gonna be a fun match, and this is gonna get Mercedes the title that she should have won. What was it last year? She was setting up to win before she got injured. So yeah, it's pretty much cut and dry for that one as well. It's as sad as it is. I think it's gonna be a good match though. Like I think sometimes I feel bad not putting too much into it, but it's just pretty cut and dry. And why waste anyone's time? It's Mercedes is gonna win. There hasn't really been much else to the build, so and especially with it'd be maybe a little bit more questionable if it wasn't both championships on the line. But there's no fucking way Mercedes is gonna lose that. I think that's just another factor that plays into it. So yeah, and again, it's gonna be a good match though. No disrespect. Next up, we have the Elite, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, rather. And of course, Kazuchika Okada facing off against, I'm not going to say Scissor Ace as their team name. That's just crazy. Scissor Ace, which includes Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. This match, again, to me, you're going to have that one moment, right, where you have Okada and Tanahashi just facing off against each other in the ring, which is going to be pretty cool. You're going to get your like holy shit moments and things like that with, of course, their history from New Japan and just the battles that they've had. But to me, I haven't, to me, the Acclaimed have just kind of lost their sizzle, and it's sad and unfortunate, but I think they have to win this match, which is kind of crazy to say because I don't really know who would take the loss on the Elite side. maybe Nicholas, because I damn sure don't see Okada taking the L right here, the pinfall. So maybe Nicholas Jackson takes the pinfall loss here. Maybe Tanahashi pins Nick. But I think this is gonna be a fun match too, right? But I think the main thing to watch for the match here is obviously that face off. That's gonna be a pretty cool moment. And then just to see how Scissor Ace wins. Could I see the Elite picking up an upset here? Yes. But I don't see Matthew and Nicholas Jackson losing against the Acclaimed later on in the future, which we'll obviously get to at that point. So that's why I think Scissor Ace, just crazy name, is going to take the victory here. And yeah, and just to kind of balance things out with the Elite and just give at least the Acclaimed something to brag about and a little bit more, well, just something to brag about, period, right? So they have that to throw in the Jackson's face and to kind of antagonize them and to get them another, to guarantee their match even more, because since the Jacksons can do whatever they want, why would they just be so willing to face the Acclaimed again in the future? So to me, Scissor Ace is picking up the victory here. What could quite possibly be the match of the night is Bryan Danielson facing off against Shingo Takagi, which is another tournament match for the men's Owen Hart. Oh, Owen Hart. Why do I keep saying that? I just keep combining shit. Owen Hart Cup tournament finals, or not finals rather, but matchup. And again, unfortunately, this is another no-brainer. Bryan Danielson is going to be taking the victory here. I liked his promo in that he said that he's tired of losing the big ones, and just the fire that he had and the intensity there. That alone just amped up the match more than, almost anything else they probably could have done. And to me, maybe if Takagi was sticking around further, or there could be or a little bit more rather, there could be more of a possibility of an upset, but I don't really see that happening. But again, this is gonna be another really, really good match. So Bryan Danielson is taking the victory here. This could possibly even be the opener of the main card. Because Bryan seems to like opening some cards, in the bigger pay per views. It's one of those things I've heard. Like if you're not gonna be in the main event, you want to be in the opener. So kind of makes sense there. You know what I mean? So again, no brainer that I think Danielson's gonna win here. I think that's probably the obvious choice with everyone doing predictions here. And with the main event, we have your AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland facing off against Will Ospreay, who is your international champion. Um, Look, we pretty much it's the same story. If you again watch my show or the prediction show for Double or Nothing, it's the same story. Ospreay is, of course, the challenger coming in, but he's looking to become a double champion. I I have mixed feelings on him already looking past the championship match, but I am glad that Swerve addressed it on this past Dynamite, that, like Will Ospreay was already coming out there. And again, it was to show up MJF, right? But he went out there and issued a challenge to Daniel Garcia for a Dynamite on this coming Wednesday. So it's just, to me, I just kind of like, I don't know. Like, this is your first opportunity at the big title in AEW, and you're already looking forward towards the next week to face off against Daniel Garcia to defend your championship. I get the idea that he's a fighting champion and he's just belt hungry, kind of like Mercedes, right? Going out there and trying to win all the titles type thing. Um, I just would have liked him to have a little bit more solidarity focus on the AEW World Championship itself. And I think that could actually play into kind of his redemption story and his chase story afterwards, that his focus was diverted. And I think, speaking of focus, we're gonna have an appearance by the Don Callis family, and I think they're gonna have some type of includement rather in the main event, and some type of interference, whether it's direct or indirect, if they're just distracting Will or if it's actually physical. But I think that it's going to be one of those issues where that Will wasn't 100% focused going into it, and he kind of learns his lessons. And I think even one of those two, it's going to be the hesitation of hitting the Tiger Driver 91. Maybe it's one of those things where he goes to hit it and he kind of second guesses himself, and he looks over at Don Callis or something like that, and then, or Callis interferes or something, and then Swerve strikes and picks up the victory. But I don't think that Ospreay is going to be winning here. I think this was done to get a big match on the pay-per-view itself here, because I think Swerve needed a big time title defense, and I think this is going to be a good showcase. As crazy as it is to sound, or as crazy it is to say, rather, for Osprey, I think this solidifies him in that main event light as well, and I think it's going to be a good kind of foil to get him back into the main event picture towards All In. Whether they do end up pulling the trigger and having him face kind of like a rematch against Swerve at All In and win the title there, or if they go the MJF route. As like I said, with him coming out here or this past Wednesday on Dynamite and interfering in MJF's business and one upping him in New York. I mean, granted they weren't in Long Island, but in New York, his home state, that being MJF's. Um, and just kind of walking away. It's very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe we have any big branded dynamites between now and All In. So your build is going to be focused on All In. So I don't know why you would have Will and MJF be interacting as much as they are and referencing each other as much as they are if you're not going to have them face off soon. And I don't see you doing that on a random dynamite, right? Unless you're going to push it out to until Grand Slam, which I believe is maybe September. Um, but to me, like if you're going to do that, then why even start now? That's way too far out. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see the direction that Osprey goes going into All In. But it's kind of fun that we're still up in the air. So that's just another reason why I'm sticking with Swerve Strickland retaining the title here, and I think it's needed for Swerve too. I think he's doing well as the champion, and I think he needs to continue doing that. And I think if you take the title off of him, you chop his legs right out from underneath of him right now, and you really just stop a good thing before it's really getting good. So that being said, again, my official pick is on Swerve retaining, and I don't even think that's much of a surprise. You know, I can see obviously if you're picking Will Ospreay, I understand it, and if he wins, I will say I will be surprised. Because to me, I'm more confident that Swerve is going to retain. So yeah, those are my predictions for the matches themselves. Do I think we're gonna get any surprise debuts? I would fucking think like it would be perfect. And if you want to talk about Forbidden Door and if you want to really shake shit up, I think it would be prime to have the number one Forbidden Door entrant walk through, and that would be Shane O'Mac, right? Capitalizing on all the hype and all the speculation out there. I think it'd be fucking crazy and hilarious if all of a sudden we hear "Here Comes the Money" or some variation of it. And Shane comes out here and does his little shuffle. I think that would be funny and just the best thing. I think that would just be a big smack in the face to a lot of people. And I think that Shane could do possibly a lot of good behind the scenes. Again, I touched a little bit on that on the previous show that I did. But I think that if Shane does come back, it's going to be very key on what his role is, and I think his first feud is absolutely going to be Darby Allin. So that's why again, not putting any real stock or hype into that, but I think if you're talking just on black and white paper, like Forbidden Door, it definitely fits that format and theme. So, what would be even more forbidden than that, right? A McMahon coming through to AEW, it'd be reminiscent of and very time appropriate, right? Of the WCW esque days when the invasion storyline was going through and Vince was buying WCW and Shane bought it out from under him. Now, granted, yes, that was an actual storyline, and WWF had actually bought the company of WCW already, but that's nowhere near what this is going to be. And I'm not even saying they would do an invasion type angle, not even recommending it, but it would just the feeling itself and just the fact that McMahon is in AEW would just be wild. Um, so yeah, I just had to. I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, yo, that would just be apropos, if nothing else. But do I see anyone else coming through? Nothing crazy. Maybe a Camille if she if the rumors are true that she did sign with AEW back in I think it was April. It wouldn't be something that she would have to like that would be special to the name or the idea of the Forbidden Door since she would be an AEW talent, but I could see her debuting to it like right after Mercedes wraps up with Stephanie Vaquer. I think that could be a nice little launching pad and a launching story for Mercedes going forward. So yeah, I think that'd be cool too. But in my well, I do before I move on. I do think that we may get a Hangman sighting, and I think I haven't seen Collision yet. I kind of am recording right during it, but I have heard that there's rumors that Hangman Page is returning, so that would not be a big surprise there. But I don't really know what he would do. I think obviously it well, I take that back. It's pretty obvious what he would do. He would most likely go after Swerve, right? So that could be something that would, I guess, put a little bit more stock into Osprey winning and beating Swerve and going into All In as the defending champion, and then having Swerve right back into a heavy storyline with Hangman. But I just don't want to see that happen to Swerve, and I don't want Swerve to lose the title like that, and just to revert into that storyline. So I'm sticking with my pick from earlier, but I do think that we'll get a Hangman sighting. So with that all being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show and the pod. I really appreciate it. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at me personally at ASHMANNS, or the show's Twitter page at Kagash Podcast _. You can watch on YouTube if you're not doing that already, and you can like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Or you can just check it out and listen to it on Apple and Spotify, get the audio version, whatever you prefer. But as always, I just appreciate you guys checking out the show, and feel free to drop in the comments, whatever or wherever is easiest for you, and I'll do my best to check it out and respond to you guys before next year. But thank you guys. I hope you have a great weekend and enjoy Forbidden Door, and let me know what you guys think as well.